You heard it last night. That sound rising from somewhere in the dark outside your window, the long rising note, the cascade of yips that followed, and then the silence after, which felt somehow louder than the howl itself. And you thought what most people think in that moment: a coyote howling at the moon. It is one of the most persistent images in the American suburban imagination. It is also almost entirely wrong. The moon has nothing to do with it. What you heard last night was a structured communication event with a specific sender, a specific set of recipients, and a specific body of information being transmitted, some of which was about your neighborhood. Stay until the fourth section, because what researchers documented about what urban coyotes are actually encoding in those sounds near residential areas is the detail that changes the way you hear that sound forever. Number 1, the moon has nothing to do with it, and what the timing of the howl actually reveals. Coyotes do not howl more on full moon nights than on dark ones. This has been tested. Researchers tracking coyote vocalization rates across lunar cycles in multiple urban and suburban study areas found no statistically significant correlation between moon phase and howling frequency. What drives the timing of howling is not light. It is social information and territorial pressure. The two peak vocalization periods in suburban coyote populations are crepuscular, dusk, and dawn, the same transition windows when territorial negotiation is most active, when animals are moving between rest and patrol, when the information value of a broadcast is highest. A group yip howl at 9 p.m. is not a response to the moon. It is a response to something that happened in the territory within the last few hours. Another coyote crossed a boundary. A pack in the adjacent range called first, and this group is answering. A new variable appeared in the landscape. The howl is the response to an event, not to a celestial body. And once you understand that, the sound you heard last night stops being atmosphere and starts being information. Number 2, the vocabulary, and why each call type is a different message entirely. Coyotes produce at least 11 distinct vocalization types, each with a different structure, a different function, and a different set of recipients. The solo howl, the long ascending note that carries the farthest and sounds the most like what most people imagine when they think of a coyote call, is primarily an individual location and identity broadcast. It says, "I am here, I am this animal, this is my position in the territory." It is used most often by animals that have become separated from their group or that are marking their presence in a space after a period of silence. The group yip howl, the cascading multi-animal call that sounds like controlled chaos, is a territorial cohesion broadcast. It says, "We are here, we are numerous, this range is occupied." It is the call most often triggered by a perceived territorial challenge from another group, and it is the one most likely to produce a response from other packs within range. The short bark and bark howl are close proximity alerts, predator or unknown presence nearby, used when the animal needs to communicate urgency without the full territorial broadcast that a howl carries. Each of these calls is structured. Each carries compressed information. And a coyote within range receives that information and acts on it within seconds, adjusting its movement, its position, its own vocalization. On a clear night, a coyote's howl carries for up to 3 miles. Every coyote within that radius receives the message. Your neighborhood sits inside a communication network that has been operating continuously, night after night, regardless of whether you were listening. Number 3, who is listening, and the eavesdroppers you never thought about. The recipients of a coyote's vocalization are not only other coyotes. Wildlife acoustics researchers studying multi-species responses to coyote calls in suburban environments have documented what they describe as cross-species listening behavior, other animals using coyote vocalizations as environmental information without being the intended audience. Deer adjust movement patterns in response to coyote group yip howls even when the deer are not in the direct territory. Foxes have been documented rerouting away from areas where sustained coyote howling indicated a group territorial event in progress. Even domestic dogs, particularly those with intact working instincts, respond differently to different coyote call types in ways that suggest they are extracting information from the structure of the call, not just reacting to the sound level. The howl you heard through your window was not just communication between coyotes. It was a broadcast that restructured the behavior of multiple species across a several-mile radius. Your neighborhood's wildlife activity for the hours following that call was different than it would have been without it. The coyote did not howl into silence. It howled into a network. Number 4. What the howl near your house is actually encoding, and why your neighborhood specifically is in the message. This is the section most people are not prepared for. When a resident coyote group howls within or near a residential area, the vocalization encodes not just territorial identity but environmental context. Wildlife biologists studying urban coyote vocalizations have found that the call structure, the length, the pitch variation, the number of individuals contributing, reflects the conditions of the territory at the time of the call. A group that is well established, with clear boundaries, adequate food availability, and no recent intrusions produces a howl with specific acoustic characteristics that researchers have learned to distinguish from the howl of a group under territorial pressure or resource stress. More directly, the fact that a coyote is howling near your house rather than from the park 2 blocks away tells other coyotes something specific about that part of the territory. Your yard, your street, the corridor behind your fence. These are spatial references encoded in the location of the broadcast. Other coyotes use the location information to update their mental maps. The howl you heard was, among other things, a data point about the space you live in being transmitted to every receiver within 3 miles. Your neighborhood was named, not in a language you can hear, but in one that carries. Researchers at the Max Planck Institute for Ornithology, studying acoustic adaptation in urban carnivores, found that coyotes in high human density areas modify specific elements of their call structure, pitch ceiling, internote interval, group chorus overlap, in ways that suggest the vocalizations are being tuned to the acoustic environment of the specific landscape. A coyote howling in a dense suburban neighborhood is not producing the same call, in the same way, that its ancestors produced on an open prairie. The message is being adapted for the medium. For the buildings that reflect it, the ambient noise that competes with it, the human ears that have learned to associate it with danger and sometimes trigger disruptive responses. The howl you hear has been shaped by the specific acoustic conditions of where you live. It is not generic wildness. It is a call written for your neighborhood. Number 5. What the silence means, and why it is the most important message of all. Most people who think about coyote vocalizations focus on the howls. The silence is the part that deserves more attention. A resident coyote group that has been vocalizing regularly on a defined schedule and then goes silent for several nights is communicating something significant. Either the territorial situation has stabilized to the point where broadcast is no longer necessary, or something in the environment has changed that makes open vocalization tactically unwise. In suburban territories with high human activity and unpredictable human response, researchers have documented coyote groups significantly reducing their vocalization rates in response to sustained human hazing, increased human presence, or evidence of territorial disruption. The silence after a period of regular howling is not the absence of information. It is information. It means the calculation has changed. And when the howling resumes, it means the calculation has changed again. You have been living beside this communication system your entire time in your neighborhood. The sounds you dismissed as atmosphere, as wilderness bleeding into suburb, as a coyote doing what coyotes do at night, were structured, intentional, information-dense broadcasts happening on a schedule shaped by territorial events you were not aware of and addressed to recipients who acted on them immediately. The moon had nothing to do with it. What drove that sound was the specific conditions of the specific territory your house sits inside. Now you know what you were actually hearing. And the next time it rises from the dark outside your window, you will not hear wildness. You will hear a message. Tell me in the comments, where do you hear them from, and what time does it usually happen? The pattern people describe is always more specific than they expect. I read every one.